I'm a dual citizen. I have lived both sides of the border. I'm presently in Canada. That's where I met my wife, and where I have 3 children. I am strongly opposed to assisted suicide. In Canada, we have assisted suicide and euthanasia now. And I strongly advise Connecticut not to pass the assisted suicide bill. As a physician, I believe, like my colleague, in the Hippocratic Oath and the Good Samaritan models of medicine. I will try to heal. And if I cannot heal, I'll ensure that my patients have the best of end-of-life care. Assisted suicide is not care. It only kills. In the proposed legislation, assisted suicide is put on the same playing field as palliative care. However, they are diametrically opposed. The classic New England Journal of Medicine showed that lung cancer patients with small cell cancer who were treated with palliative care and cancer care at the same time lived better and lived 3 months longer. Presently, Canada is, as you know, recently they passed the euthanasia-assisted suicide law, and that was in a little bit less than 2 years ago. But now they're studying extending the assisted suicide euthanasia to children, including mature minors, children as young as 11 and 12 years old, who could see their lives ended prematurely without parental consent or prior notification. Nadine is a 14-year-old young woman who was told she had a very aggressive form of leukemia, which she did. She underwent multiple chemotherapies, as well as a failed bone marrow transplant. She said, and I'm sorry, I had a bigger picture with my documents, and there's a picture of her here. I don't know if you can focus in on that. But she said she would have given up without the loving support of her family. Now, at 20 years old, she's happy to be alive. At 18, in the present law in Canada, she would have been a candidate for assisted suicide euthanasia. And now with the promoting the possible legislation that they're planning to pass in Canada, they're studying, she'd be a candidate as young as 11 or 12 years old. Another one of my patients, Alexander Montroy, and I'm sorry I don't have it with me, but right here, this is a picture of him. And in 2004, he was told he had lung cancer. In fact, he was on the operating table and his lung was removed. And they did a quick frozen biopsy. They decided they would check it out before they completely removed his lung, and they found out that he actually had a lung fungus, which he successfully was treated for. So he's happy to be alive. He states, and he did this on our Canadian television network, that he would have opted for assisted suicide or euthanasia if it had been available. Another one of my patients, Mona Latour, in 2007, it's about 10 years ago, was told she had incurable lung disease. In fact, it was a lung specialist who told her and said, you only have a few months left to live. And Mona today is happy with 2 grandchildren that she would have missed, because she said she would have opted for assisted suicide and euthanasia 10 years ago if it had been available. Once laws are passed for adults, they are extended to children and the depressed without any underlying disease. In Belgium and in Holland, presently, you can be just depressed and have access to assisted to euthanasia. In fact, they did a study in the British Medical Journal where they documented in Belgium about 30 people, including as young as 20, and in Holland about 40 cases of euthanasia, which is the direct injection versus taking the cocktail for people with just pure depression. Canada, we're now studying to extending it to those who are purely depressed. People say, well, we can make it safe. And if you look at the legislation, they have various safeguards. You have to have 2 doctors. You need to have informed consent, be told that you have a terminal disease, less than 6 months to live. As we explained those predictions are not accurate. As my colleague said, up to 70% error rate in predicting who's going to live less than 6 months. And even with diagnostic errors, it's 20%, and for lethal diagnostic, it's 5%. These are in US American studies. In Belgium, 1/3 of cases of euthanasia are performed without consent. 1/2 of the cases go unreported. My colleague talked about Oregon. I can tell you about Quebec. They just commissioned a study, and 31 cases of 638 that were done last year did not follow the rules or safeguards. And that's just the beginning, because the numbers keep going up. In fact, the Minister of Health, prior to the legislation, he said it'll only be a very small handful, at most 25. In the first year, 638. It gets bigger and wider. People say, well, we're part of a progressive society. Well, I live in a progressive society. Here, I even believe in socialized medicine, so I'd probably be considered a communist. Maybe if you knew that I believed in that, you would have invited me to speak. But progressive societies do not put in place assisted suicide and euthanasia. That is not progressive. It's dangerous. England and France have rejected it. They say it's too unsafe. The World Medical Association, which numbers 9 million physicians in 100 countries, have rejected, in fact, advised doctors in those countries, even where it's legal, don't practice it. Refuse, even if it puts your medical practice at risk. I just want to make 2 more quick comments. Pessimistic doctors. I don't know if any of you have ever run across pessimistic doctors, but who always say things look bad. In fact, it's worse than you think. But they did a study and they showed that patients were refused admission to ICUs with asthma and were more likely to die if you had a pessimistic doctor. People say, well, it's really good, and doctors believe in it. Well, I can assure you, recently it was looked at in Ontario, which numbers, it has a population of around 15 million people. 99.75% of the 30,000 doctors, only 74 doctors, so close to 100%, will not get involved with the euthanasia and assisted suicide. A recent story in the Canadian media this past few weeks, a man in his 40s has taken the Ontario government to court because he wanted home care services, self-directed home care service. This was refused, but he was offered, rather, assisted suicide. Assisted suicide, I advise you, I warn you, don't pass it in your state. It's dangerous. And in the rest of the country, because I am a dual national and I am an American as well as a Canadian, I really believe you need to reverse it. The legislation in the rest of the country, and work hard to reverse those states, because those are your fellow Americans who are dying needlessly in California, Oregon, Colorado, and Washington State. Our citizens on both sides of the border need to be cared for and not killed. We need to provide for medical aid in living and not medical aid in dying. Thank you.